A woman is in labor with all her strength, but the beautiful baby she gave birth to was born with no limbs.
The daughter. Bring her over, I want to look at her.
The nurse found an excuse to take the newborn away, so as not to upset the mother. However, the doctor also shook his head after some examination. He said the baby girl could not have survived. The doctor said she had an extremely rare form of phocomelia. It's not just the surface of her body that's deformed. She may also have severe internal damage. No one knows how much more pain she will suffer, even though she had only been alive for less than an hour. The nurses had to tell Rose, who had just given birth, the cruel truth. But David, a baby's father, arrived late to the hospital at this time.
I got a bit tied up last night, so...
The nurse had to ask him to wait outside the room. She mustered up the courage to go inside the room, but David found the baby's room alone at that moment. He picked up his beautiful daughter with a happy face. However, when he lifted the blanket, his expression changed instantly.
How could you even let that live?
I need to see her. I need to see her.
Rose almost collapsed when she found out the truth, but then her husband barged in and ranted that there was no way that thing would ever enter his house. Rose struggled to get out of bed and nervously moved to her child's room, fighting through the pain, and as she held her daughter tightly in her arms.
She smells like my office.
Rose was heartbroken the moment she saw her daughter's body, but she promised her daughter that she would make sure she grew up happy and safe. Late at night, the doctor stayed in the room to observe the baby's condition. A loud cry ignited hope. The doctor was touched by the child's strength.
She is. She wants to live.
A few days passed. The child's condition improved day by day. However, Rose's husband never came back to the hospital after that. Rose's daughter was small in stature. All the clothes she bought did not feed her daughter. The nurse felt sorry for her and went to her husband, but the stubborn David still refused to accept the child. The nurse couldn't interface too much. She only reminded David that the situation seemed to be a big problem, but the pain of separating a parent from a child is the hardest part. At that moment, his oldest daughter brought out a lot of small clothes. She had learned of her sister's condition, but still wanted to see her. David was persuaded by the children to bring them to the hospital room early the next morning. Lisa gently stroked her sister's forehead. She looked gentle and loving. The older brother also said he would be a man to protect his sister. The strong mother looked at the two understanding children and was instantly filled with strength.
Sometimes in life, you got to be grateful for what you have got, not what you've not got.
At this time, the brother wanted to hug his sister, but his behavior was stopped by Dad.
You'll be too rough. You might hurt her. Give her here.
The father finally let go of his prejudice and bias and accepted his imperfect daughter. The family will be united to face future problems together. Love in the world always exists in various forms. As long as there is love in our world, the sun will be shining everywhere. This woman is 8 months pregnant. Her husband pokes her in the chest with a hot cigarette. She was abused and then slammed to the ground by her husband. He even locked the door to her house in front of her son. He not only abused his wife in secret, but even humiliated her in public. He shows off his wife's great body at parties without any concern for her embarrassment. When the party was over, Lester, who had just completed 8 months in prison, even approached his wife slowly. Despite her pregnancy, Trude pushed him away, and he was furious. He even said he was going to go out and find a prostitute because the prostitutes were doing a much better job than her for money. Trude was slammed to the ground by him. As she struggled to get up, her son on the stairs witnessed what had just happened. She had to smile and reassure him that they were just playing a game. For Trude now, her child was her only support. But when she woke up from her nap the next day, her son Mickey was gone. The boxing gloves on the wall were gone too. Trude immediately realized the danger. Mickey was standing in the ring, shivering. By the time Trude arrived, her son was already on the floor. Trude approached the police and tried to restrict her husband's right to see her son. But the police said he was also the father of the child, so they could only give Lester a verbal warning. Lester returned home and was furious.
The police! Making sure there was nothing they needed to investigate when there wasn't a mark on the little bastard!
Trude stood her ground and said she wanted to keep her son safe. Her backbiting angered her husband. He throws her to the floor and locks the door with the key and leaves. Trude was in a lot of pain, but had to explain to her son that they were just playing pirate games. She didn't want to leave any trauma in her son's childhood. However, as she struggled to get up, she realized she was in labor. She rushes to her son to help her find tools and pries open the door with abdominal pain. Trude struggled to get to the clinic in the middle of the night with her son in tow. Her young son was her mother's only support. Luckily, she was rescued just in time. Trude managed to give birth to a lovely daughter. She sold all her jewelry and put new locks on the house to escape her husband's control. But her husband was knocking frantically at the door at night.
It is my house too because I'm your wife, and you are not coming over this threshold because my children aren't safe if you do.
Trude rushed to take her baby into her arms. A mother's instinct is to protect her children in times of danger. She hired a lawyer just to divorce her husband and get custody of the children. Being a mother makes a woman stronger. This time she was determined to get rid of her demons and take her children with her to start a new life. Domestic violence usually recurs and escalates in both frequency and severity. That's why we must not tolerate domestic violence in any form. Someone may have been hurt in some way, but we all have the right to start over whenever we can. When a British daughter-in-law meets a Chinese mother-in-law, she is tormented by postpartum confinement. She had to keep the windows and doors closed to keep her daughter-in-law out of the wind. She wouldn't let her daughter-in-law bathe or touch water for a month. She forced her daughter-in-law to drink fish soup every day to promote breastfeeding. What's more, Mrs. Chen even set up a fireplace in her house in the heat of June. She even tried to cover her newborn baby with quilts. The problem of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law has been a long-standing problem. Lucy and her mother-in-law also have cultural differences. Her English dinner is always disliked by her mother-in-law. This evening Lucy was enjoying the cool evening breeze. She suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Lucy was finally ready to unload her baby. Mrs. Chen stayed by Lucy's side. After several hours of struggle, her baby was finally born. But when Mrs. Chen learned that it was a girl, she suddenly changed her expression.
What is it, Ma? Do you wish she was a boy?
No. Girls very special too.
From that moment on, Mrs. Chen started to take care of her in Chinese style.
Craft, very bad for you and baby. Careful with heads.
Mrs. Chen carefully picked up the baby and showed Lucy the correct way to hold the baby.
小可爱，当奶奶trở来。
When they talked about what to name the little girl, Lucy wanted to name her daughter after her mother's name, Linda, but Mrs. Chen was strongly against her suggestion.
Oh, no. Very bad luck to have same name as dead relative. Very bad.
What?
No matter how much the nurse helped to explain that it was a cultural difference between the East and the West, Mrs. Chen could not accept it. Lucy's husband didn't dare to resist either. Finally, Mrs. Chen decided to name Lucy's daughter Lynn. Mrs. Chen's daily concern made Lucy a bit broken. Mrs. Chen also turned on the fireplace in the summer. She didn't allow Lucy to touch water. Even if Lucy wanted to use water to wipe her body, she would forbid her to do so.
Ma, I smell. I've got a dumping headache and I'm too hot.
Lucy could not stand it anymore and turned off the stove. She also took her daughter back from her mother-in-law. She said behind closed doors that this was her daughter and not her mother-in-law's. Lucy did not notice a trace of loss on Mrs. Chen's face.
I tried to do right by you.
You think lying in bed for a few weeks is hard? You have no idea what hard is.
Lucy looked at her mother-in-law's setback and didn't understand what it meant. However, the next day when she woke up in a daze, she found that her daughter, who should have been crying, was not moving at all. Lucy panicked on the spot. She immediately carried her daughter to the floor. Mrs. Chen rushed to use the mirror to test her granddaughter and found that she was still breathing. So Mrs. Chen immediately ran to the hospital with the baby in her arms.
Not moving.
The doctor immediately started the examination and found that the child was suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. Luckily, the baby girl was rescued in time and her life was saved. At this moment, Mrs. Chen quietly watched over her granddaughter and prayed that she would wake up soon. It was at this time Lucy learned her mother-in-law's secret. It turns out that Mrs. Chen was pregnant during the war, but she was attacked by the Japanese and forced to flee. Mrs. Chen gave birth to her daughter on a rainy roadside, and her granddaughter was as beautiful and lovely as she was. But they couldn't stop fleeing. They were all drenched by the rain all night long. Mrs. Chen watched her daughter freeze to death in her arms. This became her eternal pain.
I just want to keep Lynn safe and warm, and I nearly lost her too.
Lucy finally understood Mrs. Chen's intention of doing these things. As a mother, she also understands Mrs. Chen's feelings at this moment. Her little granddaughter finally managed to wake up after all their hard waiting, and from today onwards, this family will be filled with harmony and happiness.